Let me use myself as an analogy again, since again, all I have is my own permission for this. Here I am sleeping this morning. Every time when you wake up or when I wake up, we have choices. There are all sorts of choices about what we're going to do next. We can sit there and ponder it and think, well, what am I going to do next with the day? I can get up and I can brush my teeth, or I can brush my hair. I can make myself some breakfast. I can decide what I'm going to have for breakfast. Maybe I'll have oatmeal. Maybe I'll have an omelet. Maybe I'll get something from a restaurant to go on the way here today. Maybe I'll invite friends over to have breakfast. Or maybe I'll have some coffee. Maybe I'll journal. Maybe I'll exercise a bit before church. Maybe I'll watch the Sunday morning talk shows. Maybe I'll read the newspaper. Or maybe I'll just go back to bed. The point is, and that's just in the first couple of minutes of being awake. Think about that in your life. Think about how many choices you make in just the first 30 minutes of being awake. The point is that at any given moment, you have tons of processes and choices in front of you. Most of these happen automatically without us even thinking about it. Your body's choice to breathe. Your eye's choice to look around the room and adjust to light. Most of the processes happen without us even thinking about them or knowing them. The earth revolving on its axis, seas moving in and out. And then it gets even more mind-blowing because those are just your choices. But not only do you have all those choices, but so do all your neighbors. All their processes and all the decisions they have to make. The natural processes of the world, weather systems, the cells in your body, the cells of every other living body, the plankton of the sea, the creatures of the air. All of them are changing in each given moment too. In other words, and this is the bottom line, the number of possibilities in any given moment is quite literally beyond our comprehension. And so what process theology says is that this is what God knows. This is the sense in which it makes sense to say God knows all things. God knows all the possible things, and that's a huge number. It's an infinite number of things that might happen next. There's just one thing God doesn't know. What will actually happen? Because it hasn't happened yet. And the decision of each moment is up to us. Us being rocks and plants and trees and processes. And if we human beings have real free will, we have the free will to choose what will happen next. This gets us back to 2 weeks ago when we were talking about the Garden of Eden. We talked about the talking snake. You remember us talking about the talking snake? How I said it was the most important character. Well, it is. Why is there a talking snake? I don't know. There just is one. The talking snake is a part of creation itself. There is so much that goes on in the natural world that simply is. The world is set up with moment after moment after moment of decisions, conscious and unconscious, that lead us into the future. Some of them don't seem to matter at all. What you're going to eat for breakfast, Wheaties or cornflakes. Some of them matter a great deal. But all of them have to do with our free choices. And all of them have to do with navigating a world filled with talking snakes. Somebody challenged me on Facebook to tell this story, which actually happened yesterday, and it fits perfectly. Yesterday around lunchtime, I was enjoying a ride down the White Rock Trail on my bike, and a beautiful egret, looks just like this, swooped over my head. I could see it coming, the shadow. I saw the shadow coming up behind me and the wingspan, and it sailed, and I thought, what an incredible moment of nature and me all sort of connected together. Yes? And I looked up. It was about 5 feet in front of me, just in time to see it pee on me. I am not kidding you. It dive bombed me like a B-52. I swear it was intentional. Seriously, do egrets mark their territory? Really? I really wondered. And here's the point that fits. Right there in the midst of the glory of God's creation, the beauty, the wonder, the awe, there is bird mess. Creation, creativity, the evolution of the world is a messy process. But it's also a God-created process. Not created for evil, but created just such that there are these kind of things in the world that cause chaos. They're talking snakes. They're choices between good and bad. There are parts of the natural order that cause things to go wrong. And this helps us to explain evil. Because there's always a talking snake. There's our moment of choice, but there's the moment of choice that somebody else has. And maybe our values clash with other people's values. Maybe the laws of nature and weather conspire to create violent storms. Maybe our bodies, the own process of our bodies, work against us and we get sick. Sometimes we personally make terrible choices, or others do, and do it to us, and cause great evil. Sometimes unintended consequences and others' choices affect us. Charles Hartshorne said it this way: the root of all evil, suffering, misfortune, wickedness is the same as the root of all good, joy, happiness. That is freedom, decision-making. To attribute all good to good luck or all to good management is equally erroneous. Life is not and cannot be but a mixture of the two. It is the existence of God that makes it possible for the innumerable decisions to add up to a coherent and basically good world where opportunities justify the risks. Without freedom, no risks and no opportunities. You know, this is why one of the first and greatest commandments that the people of Israel got had to do with choices. On that day, they were crossing over into the promised land. God told them they had choices that day. I've set before you life and death, good and evil. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day that I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore, choose life. See, God sets these things before us in every moment. Much is up to us as creatures in the world. Now, in this last statement, Hartshorne said something that may sound troubling to you. He said the world is coherent and basically good. And you remember that God called the world very good. But all around us, we see all that suffering in the world, so how can we call it good? Well, some of it has to do with perspective, like we talked about last week. We saw this last week. Here we are in our little spaceship. That's us right there, right now. But as you broaden your perspective, you realize that even if things are happening horribly for you, there are any number of amazingly good things that are happening in every single moment. A whole lot of amazing order and amazing connection has to be going right at any moment in the world for our lives and for the universe to exist. Other way to understand this is through faith. Through faith. Through seeing God's loving acts through the beauties of science, the powers of evolution, the creativity of art, and loving relationships between people. Marcus Borg called faith radical trust in God, trusting in the ocean, a lack of anxiety, trusting that reality is gracious. That's a part of all of this too. Trusting that the reality of reality is love, and that love is God in God's self. God loves the world by working in and through natural processes, the decisions that get made every moment. And God wishes the best for us and wishes that we would make good choices, because our choices literally affect others and affect God. We have that capacity to change things. That's what Jesus said in the Great Commandment. Remember that? Love God. Love your neighbor. Love yourself. Jesus clearly understood that there are many commandments in the Bible, but that all the other commandments have to do with this one. All the other law and prophets, he said, hang on this. I've said for many years that this great commandment of loving God, loving neighbor, loving self functions more like a law of nature. To the extent that we love God, we will be able to love neighbor and self. To the extent that we love neighbor, we'll be able to love God and self. To the extent that we love self, we will be able to love God and neighbor. Charles Hartshorne doesn't call them laws of nature, but he did call them this, which I found interesting. He said, the great commandment is the most exacting expression of an idea to be found outside of pure and applied mathematics. What did he mean by that? Well, he said, it doesn't say nearly as yourself. Don't love others nearly as yourself. It says love for self and the other are principally the same. The ideal is their strict equality. We are to love ourselves as valuable to God. This is exactly how we are to love the neighbor. In so much as you've done it for the least of these, you've done it for me. The justification for the love of others is direct as that for the love of self. God is a part of each and every human person. God is a part of each and every creature in creation. So what we do matters to God. It can literally change some piece of God. We are all a part of God, and God is a part of us. As Paul said, we live and move and have our being in God. So, yes, we are all fragments of God, tiny pieces, and so is everyone else. And so how we treat the environment, how we treat others, it really does matter. Prayer matters. Prayer matters. Our prayers, the prayers of others, matter in terms of what happens in the world. God feels our feelings. God understands our joys and our sorrows. This is a very mysterious part of it all. Hartshorne says, if you hurt my cells, you hurt me. If you give my cells a healthy life, they give me a feeling of vitality and at least minimal happiness. The same principle applies to God. Hurt another human being, hurt the world, you're hurting a part of God. But if we spread love and joy and peace, then God also experiences that joy and love and peace as well. Each moment, God sets before us a choice. Each moment, God hopes that we'll choose love. And this is how we finally make our way back to where we were at the beginning, creativity. Genesis tells us that God created the world and called it very good. Creativity is the truth about the nature of reality. And in any given moment, we have the choice to be creative, to create some new possibility for ourselves, to experience God's new creation. So love God, love neighbor, love self, and anytime you do any one of these, you are spreading God's creative love around the world. Amen.